My bets are on Sally, bisexual, Clarissa, lesbian. Both of them ending up with husbands. Unfortunate. This is essentially going to be a reading journal. I love to read. I get a lot from it that I want to be able to remember, take in, internalize, and I thought this would be a really good way to mark the occasion every time I finish a book that I like or not. And I thought I'd start with my latest read, which is Mrs Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. It is written as a flow of consciousness. It leaps between points of views and characters and just paints such beautiful, beautiful, beautiful pictures and imagery in your head. And I'm so excited to delve into it. I guess, spoiler alert first, this book came out about 100 years ago, 1925. I think there's still something to enjoy if you've never read that book. It might make you want to read it, which is always a plus, because then I get more people to talk about this shit that I love. But without further ado, I'll start with a little summary and then we'll dive right into passages I really like. Mrs. Dalloway covers one day from morning to night in one woman's life, Clarissa Dalloway, an upper-class housewife, walking through her London neighborhood to prepare for the party she will host that evening. When she returns from flower shopping, an old suitor and friend, Peter Walsh, drops by her house unexpectedly. The novel also features a second protagonist in Septimus, a veteran of World War I, often visited by hallucinations, mostly concerning his dear friend Evans, whom he had unresolved, unrequited sexual feelings. So, really? I think I was so blinded by Clarissa's clear lesbian subtext. Not even subtext. She kisses a girl when she's a teenager, and she's like, "This is the most beautiful moment of my life." So just text that I completely didn't clock Septimus as one of the girls. I could see it. I could see it. I don't know. I saw it more. He seems to have clear affection for his wife. It seems more that he's unable to feel anything because of his trauma rather than because he is so removed from his own sexuality. But I could definitely read it that way. The only person he thinks about is his buddy who died at war, which fair. You don't have to have wanted to fuck your buddy to feel grief. Uh, we have an upper class housewife and a veteran, both just going through the same day in June in London, in between the two world wars. And there's something in the very beginning of this novel that immediately grabbed me. I think we're on page 3 or something, and it's just about Clarissa making her way through Bond Street in London with a flow of people. And then she goes, "But often now, this body she wore, with all its capacities, seemed nothing. Nothing at all. She had the oddest sense of being herself invisible, unseen, unknown. There being no more marrying, no more having children, but only this astonishing and rather solemn progress with the rest of the people of Bond Street. This being Mrs. Dalloway. Not even Clarissa anymore. This being Mrs. Richard Dalloway." 3 lines of extreme dissociation of like, oh yeah, I'm just going about my day, and then I feel sometimes as if existence is a bit absurd and I am nothing. And am I reduced to just not even my own name, but the name of my husband? What am I really? She is white knuckling reality. And every once in a while, her mind can't help but wonder about like, this is absurd. Just a few pages later, we have, I believe this is after she sees Mrs. Kilman, who is Clarissa's daughter's tutor, portrayed as a bitter, poor, and deeply religious spinster in her 40s. Immediately when we are introduced to Mrs. Kilman, there is a strong negative feeling that emerges in Clarissa. She feels this very intense anger, almost cruelty. And the way she describes it, I think, is just beautiful. She goes, "It rasped her, though, to have stirring in about her this brutal monster, to hear twigs cracking and feel hooves planted down in the depths of that leaf-encumbered forest, the soul." Isn't that fucking beautiful? To see the soul as this dark and impenetrable forest, the idea also that you hear things that you don't quite understand, that you fear, moving in the darkness, hooved creatures, things with fangs and yellow eyes in the dark. I love that kind of stuff. She carries on and she goes, "Never to be quite content or quite secure, for at any moment the brute would be stirring, this hatred, which, especially since her illness, had power to make her feel scraped, hurt in her spine, gave her physical pain, and made all pleasures in beauty and friendship, in being well and being loved, and making her home delightful, rock quiver and bend, as if indeed there was a monster grubbing at the roots. If you have any appreciation for writing itself, for just a well put sentence, this is one of the most delicious fucking book to read, I find. Okay, and then on page 28, I've made so many notes in this book. There's so many passages that I loved. There's the first description of Sally Seton, who is Clarissa's childhood friend. And the very reason I mentioned the strong lesbian undertone, if not full fat tone, of the novel. And it's very interesting because, like many things, Clarissa will mention those very intense moments of emotions, but in a very almost nonchalant way. In the same, she'll be talking about like, oh, I need to write a letter to this person. I need to pick up the flowers. Oh, I remember when I kissed that girl and it was the most beautiful moment of my life. Anyway, let's not think about that too much. But this question of love, she thought, putting her coat away, this falling in love with women. Take Sally Seton, her relation in the old days with Sally Seton. Had not that, after all, been love? She sat on the floor. That was her first impression of Sally. She sat on the floor with her arms around her knees, smoking a cigarette. Could you imagine being like, not knowing yourself to be a girl who likes girls in the early 18th century, being in an environment that's so strict and gendered and ruled by so many oppressive specifics. And then comes fucking Sally Seton, truly the she-they of her time, the she-they of Burton, wide-kneed, on the floor, just fucking chaining them like Dana on the pit. And Clarissa being like, and then she wonders, where could it have been, this place they met, at some party? For she had a distinct recollection of saying to the man she was with, who is that? I see what you're doing, Virginia. Clarissa leaning to the man she was with to ask who is that about a woman she finds beautiful. Anyway, and the man had told her, said that Sally's parent did not get on. How that shocked her that one's parents should quarrel. Fuck, how'd you pronounce that? Quarrel.
Quarrel.
Quarrel. Quarrel.
Quarrel.
Quarrel. Okay.
Quarrel.
Her parents fought, but all that evening she could not take her eyes off Sally. It was an extraordinary beauty of the kind she most admired. See, not only do you already, I guess, admire women in general, you have your type. Dark, large-eyed, with that quality which, since she hadn't got it herself, she always envied. A sort of abandonment. As if she could say anything, do anything, a quality much commoner in foreigners than in an English woman. Sally always said she had French blood in her vein. An ancestor had been with Marie Antoinette, had his head cut off, left a ruby ring. She literally hadn't a penny that night when she came to them, had pawned a Bruges to come down. She had rushed off in a passion. And her and Clarissa sat up till all hours of the night talking. Sally, it was who made her feel for the first time how sheltered the life at Bourton was. She knew nothing about sex, nothing. You talk about sex with Sally. Interesting, Clarissa. It's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of the first conversations you've had that opened your eyes. Nothing about social problems. She had a lesbian will tell you that there are societal issues. It's literally top 3 things, top 3 conversations you'll have with a lesbian. My bets are on Sally, bisexual, Clarissa, lesbian. Tale as old as time. Both of them ending up with husbands, unfortunate. And there they sat this summer, hour after hour, talking in her bedroom at the top of the house, talking about life, how they were to reform the world. They meant to found a society to abolish private property, and lesbian talk, and actually had a letter written, though not sent. The idea were Sally's, of course, but very soon she was just as excited. She read Plato in bed before breakfast, read Morris, read Shelley by the hour. Sally's power was amazing. Her gift, her personality, there was her way with flowers. At Bourton, they always had stiff little vases all the way down the table. Sally went out, picked hollyhocks, dahlias, all sort of flowers that had never been seen together, cut their head off, and made them swim on the top of water in bowls. The effect was extraordinary. Also, like her doing very, I don't know, basic interior design decoration choices, and Clarissa going like, fuck. Of course, Aunt Helena thought it wicked to treat flowers like that. Then one day she forgot her sponge and ran along the passage naked. That, Sally, you know what you're doing. You knew what you were doing. That grim old housemaid, Ellen Atkins, went about grumbling, suppose any of the gentlemen had seen. Indeed, she did shock people. She was untidy, Papa said, because he couldn't call her a. The strange thing, on looking back, was the purity, the integrity of her feelings for Sally. It was not like one's feeling for a man, it was completely disinterested. And oh, the first time I read that passage, this idea of disinterested, I thought it meant she was so removed from her own feelings, her own sexuality maybe, that she only could see those feelings through I love Sally's company, I love her soul, I love her mind. Now I do realize that the choice of word, disinterested, and the fact that she compares it to her feelings for men, she only saw men when it came to what could they bring, socially, financially. Every relationship she's had with men she could potentially consider partners always had that layer of what can I get from you? What can any thought of union would be pragmatic rather than sentimental. That's I missed that the first time. That's so cool. This feeling, it was completely disinterested. And besides, it had a quality which could only exist between women just grown up. It was protective on her side, sprang from a sense of being in league together, a presentiment of something that was bound to part them. They spoke of marriage always as a catastrophe, which led to this chivalry, this protective feeling, which was much more on her side than Sally's. For in those days, she was completely reckless, did the most idiotic things out of bravado, bicycled around the parapet on the terrace, smoked cigars. Absurd. She was very absurd. But the charm was overpowering, to her at least. So that she could remember, yeah, to you, girl, so that she could remember standing in her bedroom at the top of the house, holding the hot water can in her hands and saying aloud, "She is beneath this roof." You are gay, Clarissa. No, the words meant absolutely nothing to her now. She could not even get an echo of her old emotion. I beg to fucking differ. I think no. But she could remember going cold with excitement and doing her hair in a kind of ecstasy. Now the old feeling began to come back to her. Well, see, I'm picturing Brie Van de Kamp. She remembers going downstairs and feeling as she crossed the hall, if it were now to die, 'twere now to be most happy. That was her feeling, and she felt it. She was convinced as strongly as Shakespeare meant Othello to feel it. All because she was coming down to dinner in a white frock. That's where I got the white image from, to meet Sally Seaton. But nothing is so strange when one is in love. And what was this except being in love? As the complete indifference of other people. Aunt Helena just wandered off after dinner. Papa read the paper. Peter Walsh might have been there, and she doesn't even fucking remember the men who were there. All this was only a background for Sally. She stood by the fireplace, talking in that beautiful voice which made everything she said sound like a caress. It's so funny how reading it in my head, I was just like, oh yeah, lesbian undertone. And as soon as you read it out loud, you're like, you are crazy about this woman. When suddenly she said, what a shame to sit indoors. And they all went out to the terrace and walked up and down. Peter Walsh and Joseph went on about Wagner. She and Sally fell a little behind. And then came the most exquisite moment of her whole life. Passing a stone urn with flowers in it, Sally stopped, picked a flower, kissed her on the lips. The whole world might have turned upside down. The others disappeared. There she was alone with Sally, and she felt that she had been given a present, wrapped up and told just to keep it, not to look at it. A diamond, something infinitely precious wrapped up, which, as they walked up and down, she uncovered. Or the radiance burned through, the revelation, the religious feeling. When suddenly old Joseph and Peter faced him. Stargazing, said Peter. It was like running one's face against a granite wall in the darkness. It was shocking. It was horrible. Not for herself. She felt only how Sally was being mauled already, maltreated. She felt his hostility, his jealousy, his determination to break into their companionship. All this she saw as one see a landscape in a flash of lightning. And Sally, never had she admired her so much, gallantly talking her way, unvanquished. Unvanquished. What a beautiful fucking word. I never hear that word. Unvanquished. I love this. She laughed. Also immediately unvanquished and going, she laughed. What a beautiful image. What a beautiful comparison. What a beautiful, what is not the image of victory in the face of something horrible than a laugh? She made old Joseph tell her the names of the stars, which he liked doing very seriously. She stood there, she listened, she heard the names of the stars. Oh, this horror, she said to herself, as if she had known all along that something would interrupt, would embitter her moment of happiness. There's so many casual moments of greatness in those sentences. Like when the moment is interrupted and you go from this beautiful light and flowery gift to the soul to meeting the ground with your face in the dark as this moment is ripped away from you. The contrast that really is like highlights the how much she wants this moment, how much this means to her. And just the line, all this she saw as one sees a landscape in a flash of lightning. In the blink of an eye, we have all those thoughts and emotions and these things that come to us. And it's so good. It's so incredible to have words for those experiences we've all had. It's such a beautiful passage. And it's I've had this experience. I've had there's this person that you just want to spend the entire evening with. You're discovering those feelings. You're also discovering your own animosity towards certain people. And you're like, why do I feel so angry that this person is here? Where usually like this is a friend, etc. And then like being able to slowly decipher them, but also this little image of like the evening is going and then something slows down. You get a natural, organic moment just between you and this person, and you want that moment to stretch forever. Oh my God. It's been. I used to think it only existed that it was figures of speech. This idea that you kiss somebody and the world stops, everything turns dark, and it's just you and this person in that moment. And one day you get to experience that, and it's exactly as she describes it. It's a gift. It's something that can never be taken away. It's an experience that you've had that becomes so fundamental to you, that becomes an anchor, a lighthouse, a standard of like, this is how things should feel. I'm so happy I get to delve into this. I hope you guys find this interesting. Because I fucking do, and I'm gonna keep yapping about it. Next up in the things I've noted, there's this one phrase halfway through page 33, where she just goes through the list of things she needs to do for the day. She would take her silks, her scissors, her thimble, of course, down into the drawing room, for she must also write. And there was something about that construction, the must also write, that comes after pages of deep introspection and of deep feeling of estrangements to one's body and existence in general. She has all those thoughts of what it means, what does love mean to her, what does it mean to have a body, what does it mean to exist at all, what is her relationship with death in general. And then you have this, she must also write and see that things generally were more or less in order. And something in this struck me enough to want to underline it, but it feels, again, it's this feeling of holding on to whatever you can just to stay within the flow of life, just to maybe to not turn insane, maybe because you have to cling onto certain things. There's this I read another book recently called The Denial of Death, and there's a theory that the author offers, which essentially goes that life as it is absurd, and to be a part of it, to be a part of society, to live a life that would ultimately make us happy or satisfy us or content, we have to admit a certain level of insanity within ourselves. We have to cling onto those things. We have to accept them as like, no, this is the most important thing for me right now. I think that just that one sentence, for she must also write and see that things generally were more or less in order, just brought me back immediately to that concept and how it's applied. This little pearl of extremely mundane activity or thought after really existential questions that would potentially, in passing, shake the foundation of who she is. That kind of contrast I just really enjoyed. And again, I love this kind of stuff. I love that from one sentence you can link it to so many things you've experienced, you've read, you find interesting. I love this stuff. The next passage I have written down is just a few pages later, as she is sewing, and it goes, "Quiet descended on her, calm, content as her needle. collected the green folds together and attached them very lightly to the belt. So on a summer's day, waves collect, overbalance, and fall. Collect and fall. And the whole world seemed to be saying, that is all. More and more ponderously, until even the heart in the body, which lies in the sun on the beach, says too, that is all. Fear no more, says the heart. Fear no more, says the heart, committing its burden to some sea, which sighs collectively for all sorrows and renews, begins collect, lets fall. And the body alone listens to the passing bee, the wave breaking, the dog barking, far away, barking and barking. I read recently that there's another quote I really like. I need to find who is it from, but the worst thing a man can be, as in a person, not specifically man, but the worst thing a man can be is inattentive. And to me, this is exactly what this passage is about. Being in the moment, being attentive to whatever, dedicating yourself to whatever you're doing, being fully present, and being able to make those deep connections with other experiences you've had, to really connect to what could be a chore and see it as a soothing ritual, a moment with yourself, a moment of reflection, a moment of meditation, and a moment of joy. I used to be a huge complainer, and don't get me, I love to complain, but it started to make me rely on exterior things for happiness and joy and comfort. If my exterior conditions were not perfect, then I would complain about it. Then I would be negative about it. And it's just a really demoralizing way to live. And also completely removes you of agency, of you as a person being able to find joy wherever you are. Instead, you depend on everything else for joy. You are like a baby, unable to sustain your own contentment or peace, unable to hold on to your core of joy, if that makes sense. On the plot level, nothing happens in this paragraph, but on a human level, I got a lot from it. A bitch loves to read. Oh, okay. Next, we get into one of my favorite bit of writing structure, I guess, in this entire book. So comes Peter Walsh, who was a past lover that she knew around the same time as she met Sally when they were all young, in Bourton. Where is Bourton actually? Bourton, England. Where is that located?
Burton.
Oh, Burton?
Burton.
Okay, well, why'd you put so many letters then? Pronounce that shit. You got an R in there and I don't hear it at all. Anyway, she thought she had a crush on Peter, or maybe she had a crush on Peter, bisexual, queer. I'm gonna stop queer-investigating Clarissa for 2 seconds and focus back on the text. But essentially, Peter Walsh visits unexpectedly. He's back from India. When he thinks about the feelings he had for Clarissa, he goes, "It almost broke my heart, too," he thought, and was overcome with his own grief, which rose like a moon looked at from a terrace, ghastly beautiful with light. And as if in truth he was sitting there on the terrace, he edged a little towards Clarissa. They're both sat on the sofa at this point. Put his hand out, raised it, let it fall. And there above them it hung, that moon. She too seemed to be sitting with him on the terrace in the moonlight, like that night. Like that night! Then, we'll go back to that moon thing in just a second, but 2 pages later, he comes back to her house, all like bringing back all those feelings. She goes, "Okay, well, what's happened to you?" she said. So before battle begins, because he's been gone for a long time, and he comes unexpectedly, unannounced, not letting her kind of prepare for what would be a pretty intense emotional moment. And it goes, "So before battle begins, the horses paw the ground, toss their heads, the light shines on their flank, their necks curve. So Peter Walsh and Clarissa sitting side by..." Clarissa being compared to a fighting horse. Clarissa the stallion. So Peter Walsh and Clarissa sitting side by side on the blue sofa challenged each other. I don't know, that was just a cool image. I like that. And then they have this long, tense conversation because they're both trying to juggle their feelings with pretending to be okay and pretending to both be over it. And then many pages, 10 pages later, after they've had this quite tiring and at least like emotionally taxing conversation, there goes this beautiful payoff of the initial metaphor. It goes, "And it was awfully strange," he thought, "how she still had the power as she came tinkling and rustling," because she's carrying all her fabrics and stuff. "As she came tinkling, rustling, still had the power as she came across the room to make the moon, which he detested, rise at Burton on the terrace in the summer sky. And it's that that was just so fucking cool to me. The setup and payoff from 10 pages ago of a really cool metaphor in the first place, and you can still bring it back to mention also the idea that like this woman who is just sewing on her sofa has the power to make the moon rise, to transport you immediately into the summer of your youth. That's just fucking cool, Virginia. Damn. There's nothing left to be but in awe, I find, of that kind of writing. You fucking nailed it, V. We've been talking a lot about Clarissa, but as I did mention earlier, the book has two protagonists, and this is the first one I've noted from Septimus, the veteran with PTSD. He had only to open his eyes, but a weight was on them. He saw Regent's Park before him, long streamers of sunlight fawned at his feet. The trees waved, brandished. We welcome, the world seemed to say. We accept, we create. Beauty, the world seemed to say. And as if to prove it scientifically, wherever he looked, beauty sprang instantly. To watch a leaf quivering in the rush of air was an exquisite joy. Up in the sky, swallows swooping, swerving, flinging themselves in and out, round and round, yet always with perfect control, as if elastics held them, and the flies rising and falling, and the sun spotting now this leaf, now that in mockery, dazzling it with soft gold and pure good temper, and now and again some chime, it might be a motor horn, tinkling divinely on the grass stalks. All of this, calm and reasonable, was the truth. Beauty. That was the truth now. Beauty was everywhere. I think this book came to me in a very specific time. Those observations of the mundane that seem echoes everywhere of how beautiful the world is in all of its part. I found myself making a lot more of those observations, having a lot more of those moments in grief. It's something that highlighted every little thing. Grief, I find, keep pointing to you the wind in the leaves, the color of a flower, the voice of a friend, the moment where you are right now, and that is beautiful and precious. I read this paragraph and I was like, ooh, I think I know what this is. I think I know why also this paragraph is here, why this is from the point of view of somebody who's witnessed countless horrors. Septimus, however, when he has those moments of absence to the outside world, when he is completely within his inner dialogue, he is a bit absent from his wife, specifically Lucrezia. He can't focus, he can't be there for her, he doesn't quite listen to what she says, and she is often left feeling very lonely and like she is trying to just grab his attention and get her husband back. Flow of consciousness, we leap to Peter Walsh, who left Clarissa and is walking up the street. As he is witnessing this little row they have, this little moment where Lucrezia is just trying to communicate with her husband and cannot. And that is being young, Peter Walsh thought, as he passed them. To be having an awful scene, the poor girl looked absolutely desperate. In the middle of the morning. But what was it about, he wondered? What had the young man in the overcoat been saying to her to make her look like that? What awful fix had they got themselves into, both to look so desperate as that on a fine summer morning? And one, there was something so like, well, fuck off, Peter. It's a fine summer. Also, it's not even a fine summer morning to you. You were just kind of like in the pit of despair emotionally with Clarissa, but you don't really want to admit it. But I did like the first sentence, and that is being young, to be having an awful time for, in Peter Walsh's opinion, no reason. But it's I like that idea. I like the thought of like, oh, that what seems to be so intense and passionate for us when we're younger might be receding, not for bad reasons. I don't think it's about getting more emotionally stunted or numb, but more about remembering what's important, like a fine summer morning. But again, you can't enjoy that if you're traumatized from war. So you do have, I think, also a little critique of lack of emotional attunement or attention. And I was like, oh, and why are you having such a hard time? It's a beautiful summer's day. Bitch, I have PTSD. I've witnessed the deepest low of human nature, and that's what will ultimately cause me to do something irreversible to myself. Something that was completely preventable if I had just been listened to, if I had just been heard, if I had just been given the right attention as to like, I am a full person, and if I'm having a hard time, it is worth examining. It is worth seeing with empathy, or at least curiosity, rather than dismissal from a purely different. You do not know what that person has gone through. Also, his idea that to be having an awful emotional time in relationship is just a sign of youth, when he's clearly still in the trenches himself emotionally about Clarissa. Peter, glass fucking houses, bitch. I love this book. Next on the dock, we have another moment from Septimus, and it dives into the most important loss in Septimus's life. When Evans was killed just before the armistice in Italy, Septimus, far from showing any emotion or recognizing that there was the end of a friendship, congratulated himself upon feeling very little and very reasonable. The war had taught him. It was sublime. He had gone through the whole show: friendship, European war, death, had won promotion, was still under 30. Forbes 30 under 30, war veteran edition. And he was bound... Sorry. He was still under 30 and was bound to survive. The last shells missed him. He watched them explode with indifference. He is echoing the thought of his time and his society, that emotions are ultimately unreasonable. To be unaffected in the face of immense trauma is sublime, is somehow something that should be celebrated, instead of being a clear tell of deep issues. She is describing textbook numbness that comes with depression, and very intentionally put, it was sublime. Because could you imagine a society that ultimately sees one of the biggest signs of depression as something to attain, something that would be described as sublime? What a fucking torture it must have been. And also, it's quite, maybe I missed it, but it's quite striking how we never hear about Evans. Pretty much, we don't hear about their history. We hear only about the fact that Evans has died. But unlike how we dive deep into Clarissa's past, Septimus's past is buried so deep beneath trauma that all that's left is the moment in the park, the leaf falling, the sun shining. Septimus is gone. And a few pages later, his wife witnesses something beautiful, and that's what she whispers to him. She goes, "Beautiful," she would murmur, nudging Septimus that he might see. But beauty was behind a pane of glass. It's so succinct, and it's such a perfect description of something I've felt so many times. I've sometimes described it as like everything, there seemed to be a wall between me and the world. I can see the beautiful things. I can see how maybe I should feel about it, but there seems to be this layer in between. And lo and behold, from 100 years ago, Virginia Woolf goes, beauty was behind a pane of glass. Just sniping from 100 years ago, clocking your tea from a century back. Work, Virginia. Also important to say at that point that Virginia Woolf herself endured very severe depression episodes throughout her life. So it's no coincidence that this language is so accurate, so profound, so well thought of. And once you know that, the I think those extracts hit a lot more, because she is talking about things she has felt herself. She's talking about a societal isolation she felt herself. And she makes a point in this novel to denounce how badly mental health was considered at the time. In the characters that we're going to see now of Holmes, a doctor that Septimus goes to. "So, you're in a funk," he said agreeably, sitting down by his patient's side. Imagine being a veteran with PTSD and hearing, "Hey girl, you're in a funk. Only you can change that, girl." Fuck. Wouldn't it be better to do something instead of lying in bed? For he had 40 years experience behind him, and Septimus could take Dr. Holmes for it. There was nothing, whatever the matter, with him. He stammered. "Yes," Sir William encouraged him, but it was growing late. How fascinating. It's in parenthesis, it was growing late. He pretends he wants to listen to Septimus, but he can't help but think, it's getting late now. I really want to go, and clearly there's nothing wrong with this guy. Fucking phenomenal move to put that in parenthesis, just to really emphasize how little he cares about this patient. And that's an experience that Virginia Woolf herself must have known so Too well. Just too well. On page 96, I just had to underline Miss Brush resented this familiarity intensely. She thought him an underbred fellow. Bring that back. You are underbred. Baby, your parents are cousins. And that's why you got no manners, you underbred motherfucker. That's Miss Dalloway, these are bars. As we go back to Clarissa, there's a part that's very dear to me, and it's about her parties. Why does she go to such extent to throw parties? Why does it matter so much to her? She feels rather down suddenly after having met Peter, having talked with Richard, her husband, who doesn't understand her really. She goes, it was a feeling, some unpleasant feeling earlier in the day perhaps, something that Peter has said combined with some depression of her own in her bedroom, taking off her hat. And what Richard had said had added to it, but what was it he said? There were his roses, her parties! That was it, her parties. Both of them criticized her very unfairly, laughed at her very unjustly for her parties. Well, how was she going to defend herself? Now that she knew what it was, she felt perfectly happy. They thought, or Peter at any rate thought, that she enjoyed imposing herself, liked to have famous people about her, great names, was simply a snob, in short. Richard merely thought it foolish of her to like excitement when she knew it was bad for her heart. Excitement bad for your heart. Oh, don't get too excited, dear. You know it's not good for your heart. Fuck, what a dreadful life. And both were quite wrong. What she liked was simply life. But suppose Peter said to her, yes, but you parties. What's the sense of your parties? Also, does it have to make sense to you, Peter? What if I like to have fun? Fuck off. Every man in this book is pissing me off. All she could say was, and nobody could be expected to understand. Also, love that line. Those who get it, get it. Those who don't. But what's the sense of your party? All she could say was, they're an offering. Which sounded horribly vague, but who was Peter to make out that life was all plain sailing? Peter always in love with the wrong woman. Bitter. What's your love, she might say to him, and she knew his answer. You conniving little... okay, Clarissa. You know what you got. You know the power you have. She could not imagine Peter or Richard taking the trouble to give a party for no reason whatsoever. But to go deeper beneath what people said and these judgments, how superficial, how fragmentary they are. In her own mind now, what did it mean to her, this thing she called life? Oh, it was very queer. You and me both, sister. Here was so-and-so in South Kensington, someone up in Bayswater, and somebody else in Mayfair, and she felt quite continuously a sense of their existence, and she felt, what a waste. And she felt, if only they could be brought together, so she did it. And it was an offering to combine, to create, but to whom? An offering for the sake of offering. Perhaps. Anyhow, it was her gift. Nothing else had she of the slightest importance. Could not think, write, even play the piano. She muddled Armenian and Turk, loved success, hated discomfort, must be like, talked oceans of nonsense, and to this day, ask her what the equator was and she did not know. Okay, well, no, we might have to remedy. You can't hit me with like, I'm just a girl I don't know from a century ago. You are smarter than that. You are. Also, you spent the last 100 pages proving to me that you are a capable, clever, and insightful woman. You don't put yourself down like that, girl. Because you don't know Armenian and Turk. Bitch, me too. Well, maybe I'm dumb. Now, and we go back to Septimus. He has seen the doctor. He is not being helped. Nothing seems to be able to help, and he has another one of those moments of reflection as he watches all around. He's looking outside. He sees the trees dragged their leaves like nets through the depths of the air. The sound of water was in the room, and through the waves came the voices of birds singing. Every power poured its treasures on his head, and his hand lay there on the back of the sofa, as he had seen his hand lie when he was bathing. Fear no more, says the heart and the body. Fear no more. Exactly what Clarissa's heart said to her as she was sewing. There's a part I need to go back to on Septimus's side. There was a very interesting sentence, something about him being made to endure human nature being a cruel thing that you inflict on somebody. It immediately starts to make a lot more sense when you see how uninterested and cruel and judgmental the doctors are. Final spoiler alert for the next bit. Septimus's condition worsened, and he commits suicide by jumping off the window. And it's the only thing I will say about this part, because I do I do think you should just read it for yourself. Dr. Holmes, upon hearing this, upon learning that he jumped, he calls Septimus a coward. What's the core tenets of the Hippocratic Oath, the doctor's oath? I will respect the hard-won scientific gains of those physicians in whose step I walk, and gladly share such knowledge as is mine with those who are to follow. I will apply for the benefit of the sick all measures that are required, avoiding those twin traps of overtreatment and therapeutic nihilism. I will remember that there is art to medicine as well as science, and that warmth, sympathy, and understanding may outweigh the surgeon's knife or the chemist's drug. It goes on, but just that third tenet already, warmth, sympathy, and understanding may outweigh the surgeon's knife or the chemist's drug. Well, pour one out for Septimus Warren Smith and all those he represented. As for Dr. Holmes and Bradshaw, I'm not sure if it's both. They have a party to attend that evening, and that is Clarissa's party. And it's not just them, obviously. Peter Walsh is invited, and Sally, who Clarissa has not seen in years, is also unexpectedly in town that day, and she decides to invite herself. There's one sentence I really like on page 186. A lady comes in and sees Peter Walsh, and she goes, "There's Peter Walsh," she said, shaking hands with that agreeable sinner. And I just love that turn of phrase, agreeable sinner. There's a familiarity, there's maybe even, if it's agreeable, there might be some envy, there might be some recognition of like, oh, I could never, but there's also this just like, this devil you like. Who doesn't want to be called that? Quickly after, 5 pages later, we hear Bradshaw comes to the party, Dr. Bradshaw, and talks about how one of his patients had killed himself. And Clarissa's reaction is, what business had the Bradshaw to talk of death at her party? A young man had killed himself, and they talked about it at her party. He had thrown himself out a window, up had flashed the ground. What an image. And she thinks about it more. She thinks about the kind of man who would jump. She says there are poets and thinkers. Suppose that man had had that passion and had gone to Sir William Bradshaw, a great doctor, yet to her who knows people better than anyone, obscurely evil. Without sex or lust, extremely polite to women, but capable of some indescribable outrage and forcing your soul. That was it. We get back to that idea of human nature, something that forces your soul, what you truly are in society's expectation, something that negates you. Life is made intolerable. They make life intolerable, men like that, she says on page 171. And yet he's invited to the fucking party because that's, I don't know, society's expectation. He's aristocracy and class sticks together over anything. We learn about Sally's husband as well for the first time at that party, and Sally wants Peter to meet him and her family. He must stay with them for weeks and weeks. Of course he would. He would love to stay with them. The kind of promise you make at a party, of course, when the most important thing in the world, it is suddenly so evident to you. And again, the very reason Clarissa is throwing those parties, for everybody to realize what's so fucking central about humanity, each other. And then Sally adds, all these years, the Dalloways had never been once to her place. Time after time they had asked them. Clarissa, for it was Clarissa, of course, would not come. For, said Sally, Clarissa was at heart a snob. And it was that between them. She was convinced. Clarissa thought she had married beneath her husband being, she was proud of it, a miner's son. Every penny they had, he had earned. As a little boy, her voice trembled. He had carried great sacks. That's the only thing you'll hear about her husband. And it tells you so much about Sally herself and her relationship with him and how truly happy I think they must be because she cares so deeply. The mere mention of the things he endured as a kid, even now, so many years later, are enough to make her voice shake because they're so attuned emotionally, which is the exact opposite of Clarissa and her husband. And you can interpret all that just from one parenthesis, and you can contrast it with Clarissa's relationship. One of the first things that is said in the novel is that she feels so estranged that even her name is is removed from her. She's not even Clarissa. She's Mrs. Richard Dalloway. Instead of feeling this deep emotional connection to another human being, she feels erased. And then comes maybe my favorite line in this entire book. Yet, said Sally, in her emotional way, with a rush of enthusiasm which Peter used to love her for, yet dreaded a little now. So effusive she might become. Englishmen, uncomfortable with emotions. How generous to her friends Clarissa was, Sally says, and what a rare quality one found it. Clarissa was pure-hearted. That was it. Peter would think her sentimental, so she was, for she had come to feel that it was the only thing worth saying, what one felt. Cleverness was silly. One must simply say what one felt. It's not worth it to care to seem a certain way, to hold on to abstract concepts of class, of marrying beneath or above your station, and instead marrying somebody that's right for you, somebody that makes you truly happy. There's a stripping of the ego in there, a letting go. What a beautiful book. There's a couple more things I have written down, but it's about the very last pages. And if you do intend to read it, I think I might leave it to you. Something I was left thinking about after having finished is I thought about Septimus and Clarissa, and I did wonder if there is a world where they could have saved, if she could have saved him, if they could have saved each other. I don't know that she needs saving. Even if they had met, those two people that briefly have an inner dialogue that truly overlaps. She didn't even dare to marry the man she actually felt passion for, which is Peter Walsh. She didn't even dare, potentially even considering Sally Seton as an option. As much as she has that depth in her, she is so encased in her culture, in her status. I don't know if she could have reached him. But that said, the mere mention of him makes her immediately see him. He's described very early on as somebody who had the aspirations of a poet or a writer, I think. And one of the first things she thinks about when she is told about his death is that what if he was that sort of soul that had met with Bradshaw and Holmes, people that she knows are deeply revolting. She immediately sees what nobody else in Septimus's life has seen, not even his wife. So maybe there is maybe a world where she could have saved him. Well, if anybody has any thought about it, one way or another, let me know. Yeah, I hope you found this interesting. I hope you enjoy this. And if you've listened to the whole thing, thank you so much. Stay tuned for the next one.